Um, Welcome everybody. I'm Laura Franke, the Sustainable Buildings Coordinator at Housing Development Consortium of Seattle King County. We have a great panel today that's going to join us and talk about all of the solar focused opportunities available despite the challenges we're seeing at the federal level. So I'm very excited to welcome them. I will in order to keep things moving, I'm just going to let folks introduce themselves, but we're going to start off at sort of the federal level, go to the state level, hear from a couple of our local utilities, Seattle City Light and Puget Sound Energy, and then we'll close out with Mason Rolfe, who is a practitioner in the solar industry. He's done a ton of community solar in the all around the state using many of these tools that we're going to be discussing today. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to the Lawyers for Good Government, and I am not sure who's going first, either Stacy or AC, I assume.
I will start the slideshow, but I won't be speaking. So.
I think we're actually starting with Camilla.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Hi, all. It's great to meet you and see some new faces. My name is Camilla Getz. I am a clean energy attorney with Lawyers for Good Government, which is a nonprofit, and AC, Stacy, Minho, and myself are part of the climate change and environmental justice team, where we have been focusing a lot on the elective pay tax credit. I'm going to get us kicked off with sort of an overview of what elective pay is, and then AC, our supervising tax attorney, will turn it over to some of the updates that have happened recently with the HR1. And then Minho will close out with a little bit about our Washington Clean Energy Tax Assistance Program and some case studies for you all. So let's go ahead and get started. The first slide is very exciting. Please give it a read. Next slide, please, Stacy. So like I mentioned, AC and myself, we are attorneys. But Stacy, could I get the next slide, please?
Sorry, Tamil, if for some reason it's not advancing when I'm clicking it in the presentation.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna hold on one second.
Okay, oh, perfect. So this is a waiver. If you all could go ahead and give this a read. Like I said, I'm an attorney, AC is an attorney, but we are not your attorneys. Nothing in this presentation is legal advice. We're just giving a really broad educational overview here. As always, if you have specific questions, please consult your legal counsel. All right, let's get into what is elective pay. Next slide. You can advance 2 slides. Thank you. So what is elective pay? Just in case some folks on the call aren't familiar with elective pay, let's all get on the same page here. Elective pay, pursuant to the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government will give tax-exempt entities tax-free cash funding in the form of a refund. So it's a back-end credit. Typically, the credit is 30 to 70% of the property cost to build renewable energy projects. So think things like EV charging stations and solar. What's really great about elective pay is that there is no competition, unlike a grant. It is a source of funding for clean energy projects in tax-exempt communities. And it's money on the table. So it's a great opportunity for the folks on this call. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So some of the most common project types that we have seen in our Washington SETCAP work and our work more broadly have included things like electric vehicle charging ports. I know I used to be an assistant city attorney in California, and for a lot of affordable housing projects, EV charging infrastructure was super important. So that's something that's eligible for this project. There's also electric vehicle fleet transition, maybe less applicable for you all, but I think one of the things that you all will probably have a lot of projects on, hopefully, is things like rooftop solar. And that also includes clean energy storage as well. Next slide, please. So, we only have a brief amount of time here, so we're just going to go over, oh, sorry, one slide back, please, Stacy. We're just going to go over some of sort of high level key questions that we get from entities, but also please put any questions in the chat and we'll do our best to address those there. But super high level, the entity filing for the credit has to be the entity that owns the clean energy property. So we get actually a lot of questions from affordable housing developers around solar. Is so again, the entity that files for the credit needs to own the property. So for example, the solar panels. Generally, there's no partnerships. There are some sort of like distinctions and nuances there. So if you have questions, please let us know. Financing is another big piece. Remember that this is a back-end credit. So the entity will receive the project after it's placed in service. So that means that the entity needs to have the project financed up front. We largely see this being done through things like grants, loans, bonds, cash, if the entity has it. And since a lot of the funding comes from grants, specifically restricted grants, it's good to sort of flag what we like to call the no excess benefit rule. So if the amount of the restricted grant, so if you have a grant that very broadly, is restricted to the use of a clean energy property, if that amount of the restricted grant plus the total amount of the potential credit, so think, typically around that 30% exceeds the cost of the project, then the amount of the credit, that 30%, is then reduced so that the restricted grant amount and the elective pay credit don't exceed 100% of the total project cost. So basically think no double dipping with these federal funds or other grant funds that are restricted. Something that we could talk about probably for a full hour, sorry, voice is getting tired, are what we like to call bonus adders. So there's certain requirements that if met can add, or on the flip side of the coin, potentially reduce from that base 30% credit. There's a handful of things to go in there. So if y'all have questions, put them in the chat and we can go a little bit more in depth on those bonus adders, but things like domestic content and prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. Next slide, please. So an overview of the actual elective pay filing process. We'll break it down into 3 big buckets, but again, we can go into more detail as needed. So the first bucket is the pre-filing and registration portion. So once the project is placed in service, the entity will then go on to an IRS website, a portal, and pre-file for the project. With this pre-filing process, you'll then get a unique registration number from the IRS. That number is then plugged into the IRS actual tax form. So that's step 2. It's filing these tax return forms. Again, the forms are going to vary based on the technology, but most tax-exempt entities will file to start a Form 990T. Very happy to go into more details on the tax forms. The key point here is that these tax forms are due 4.5 months after the end of the taxable year that the project is placed into service. There's also a 6-month extension if you request it. You get that extension if you're an eligible entity. So that's something that's very key for entities to have in mind. And then the last step is the best step is the IRS will make a payment. So after reviewing those tax forms, the IRS administers the funds. And then with that, I will pass to my colleague AC to discuss sort of some other high-level overview and the elective pay in the new administration. Thank you, AC.
So hi, everybody. I'm AC Meyer. I'm the supervising attorney for tax and clean energy at Lawyers for Good Government. I've been in this space for about a decade now. And the question we always have to ask when new administrations come in, they're going to have different priorities. How does this affect the laws that we have? How is this going to affect the enforcement? And in this case, next slide, at least for things that have already been in play, filings that have already been put out there, we're not seeing the kind of heel dragging that we're seeing with some of the things like grants, etc. If you have a return filed for an elective pay refund, what may happen is it may be delayed. Those issues are strictly down to personnel staffing issues with the IRS. The paper filings they went out of their way to allow last year, processing those is extremely labor intensive. And with some of the changes made to personnel levels, staffing levels, we're seeing right now is the IRS is just very much behind on processing a lot of those returns, and that's created a backlog. But what we are not seeing is actual resistance to paying out amounts that are actually owed. So for example, we recently had an entity that we work with that has been waiting a couple of months longer than they expected to get their refund. They recently received the refund with $20,000 of interest payment from the IRS because of the late payment. And that's a thing to keep in mind too. That's one reason why the IRS, despite staffing levels, is still working to get all of these pushed out, is that they are continuing to pay interest on anything that they send out late. So they want these pushed out fast as much as we do. And the issues are not in any kind of direction to stop paying them. The issues are simply they don't have the number of personnel they need to process these as quickly as everybody would like. If you have a process or if you have a return out there, a filing out there, you can check in several ways. There's the secure messaging tool that you may have used during pre-filing. There's also the general IRS email and general IRS phone numbers. That said, what we've seen most of the time, and we've heard from entities that we work with, is that calling the number for the tax exempt division directly, that 877 number listed on the slide, that will more consistently get you connected with somebody who understands elective pay and understands issues with the Form 990T that would be filed in these situations. And now, next slide, we can talk a little bit about what actually has changed with the recent bill with HR 1. We know that got passed and pushed through Congress, and it has changed a number of things, especially for the investment tax credit, the production tax credit. Those are the 45Y and 48E credits mentioned on the slide here. It accelerates the phase out for those. Projects have to be placed in service by the end of 2027. It also imposes some new rules regarding foreign entities. Definitely some issues to look at there for 45Y, 48E, the ITC and PTC, especially for solar and wind, given some of the restrictions around those, and we can talk about those a little bit. We have some documentation around those that we're prepping and should be able to send out a little bit later on. It also repeals effectively the 45W commercial clean vehicle credit for any vehicle that is acquired, and acquired means taking physical possession of, after September 30th of this year. It also repeals the EV infrastructure credit for charging property that's placed in service after June 30th of 2026. So those are two things that really, if you can accelerate those projects, it's a good idea to accelerate those as much as possible and try to get vehicles and chargers in place before those deadlines hit. It also repeals the 45V clean hydrogen production credit, although we have not seen that credit being used as much in the elective pay context. What it did not do, it did not change, for example, the bonus adder rules, low-income communities bonus, prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements. It doesn't change the Section 48 credit for ground source heat pumps. That's something that's going to continue for anything that's placed in service until the end of 2034. So that's going to be a that's an area that was nicely left alone. Also, the elective pay rules themselves aren't changed. They made some changes to these underlying credits, but the elective pay process itself has not been changed either. Next slide. In terms of what that means in practice for people, the PFE rules are going to be probably the more difficult item to deal with, especially around material assistance, which deals with material sourcing and using products that are built or manufactured by foreign entities, by companies controlled by foreign entities or registered there. We anticipate that coming up a lot for energy storage because, frankly, a lot of the battery materials necessary for energy storage aren't currently mined in a lot of places other than China. So it's one area where you'll really want to be working with suppliers to double check and take a look at whether the items they're supplying can meet those requirements. It does, again, push wind and solar projects to be placed in service by the end of 2027. We've also seen some additional clarifications on the guidance for what it means to begin construction for wind and solar. Essentially, for solar projects that are less than 1.5 megawatts, you can still use the existing 5% safe harbor or the physical work test. For wind projects, any wind projects, as well as solar projects that are larger than 1.5 megawatts, you are only going forward as of September 2nd, will only be able to establish beginning of construction through that physical work test, which requires physical work of a significant nature on the eligible energy property. So that's things like, for example, building the stands that solar panels would sit on, building the foundation for a wind turbine, actually breaking ground and doing that. And it has to be more than some preparatory work like site clearing or grading and leveling, etc. So this guidance does make it a little bit more tricky to establish construction for some of the larger projects. But for things like rooftop solar, most of those projects are in the 20 kilowatt to maybe 200 kilowatt, which is 0.02 to 0.2 megawatts, which means you're not going to be hitting that 1.5 megawatt size limit, and are very likely, in most cases, we would anticipate being able to continue using that test of paying or incurring 5% of the total cost of eligible equipment. There's also, again, as we've noted, that kind of full repeal for electric vehicles and electric vehicle chargers as of the end of September of this year and then June 30th of next year. So it's going to be important to accelerate those projects as much as possible if they're already in your planning pipelines. And from that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Minho, who will talk a little bit about the Washington State SETCAP program.
Thanks, AC. As AC mentioned, I will be chatting about Washington SETCAP. So this program essentially fills in the dots of, Camilla just provided a lot of great information about the underlying tax credits, the elective pay mechanism, AC about some of the changes, recent changes as proposed in HR 1 and posed by HR 1. And this program, Washington SETCAP, is designed to support all entities in terms of actually navigating these waters and being connected with resources and technical assistance to actually leverage and file for these credits. So next slide. To provide a bit of more context, the Washington Clean Energy Tax Credit Assistance Program is funded by, seeing the note here, I will be as quick as possible, is funded by Commerce, the Washington State Department of Commerce, and is available to essentially all entities in the state of Washington with Washington-based projects. Next slide, please. Essentially, how this program works is there are 3 service tracks. There are 3 main ways in which this program provides support to entities. First thing you do is fill out our intake form. One of my colleagues will drop that link in the chat, but once you fill out this form, you enter into our system and we schedule a brief consultation, 30-minute call with you to determine where your projects are at and what kind of help we can connect you with. If you don't have any active projects, we just have informational resources. We have a plethora of guidance briefs, webinar recordings, annotated tax forms, things to just improve your understanding of what is available, so that should you attempt to tackle one of these projects in the future, you're a little bit more equipped to do so. If you have any active projects that are either in construction and design, just not completed yet, we can connect you with a lawyer to receive free legal guidance to make sure that they can review documentation, to make sure that you're maximizing the tax credit potential of these projects. And finally, if you have completed a project already, we are partnered with Giraffe Financial. They provide a free filing service to entities. They have a platform in which once you sign up for their platform, they can support you with pre-registration. they can fill out the tax forms on your behalf, and they can also file on your behalf as well. All of these services completely free and paid for by the state of Washington. Next slide. And then finally, just to wrap things up, there's just a few case studies of folks that we've already helped through SETCAP. Their names are omitted just for privacy reasons, but we have supported multifamily and affordable housing entities in terms of receiving credits for solar on their buildings. So you'll see these three examples here. The first is just a entity that installed panels on a bunch of individual units for affordable homes. They're able to receive around $19,000 in credits through SETCAP. Second example is a larger building, multifamily building, and they are currently in the process of receiving filing support to receive around $90,000 in tax credits. And the final example is another entity that's in the early planning stages. We're supporting them legally to make sure that everything is squared away for them to eventually receive credits when the project is completed. And with that, I will log off. So thanks so much for listening. And we hope that you took something away from this, and we'll be sure to share more resources after the fact.
Thanks, guys. And with that, we're going to start focusing on the state level opportunities, and I will turn it over to Jill Eichenhorst and Aidan Garrity to continue. Thank you.
Hey there, thanks so much. My name is Aidan Garrity. I'm a solar program manager, use he, him pronouns with the Washington State Department of Commerce. I'm joined today by my supervisor, Jill Eichenhorst. And as Lauren said, we are going to be talking about state-funded solar opportunities. So if you're not familiar with Commerce's work, our mission is to strengthen communities. We do that through many different services and programs across the state, including in housing, infrastructure, economic development, small business assistance. We are in the energy division in Commerce here, which is the Washington State Energy Office. And the energy division informs, invests, and influences to catalyze a clean and just energy future. And here I will pass it to my colleague, Jill.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to provide a quick update on the Solar for All program. Solar for All is a $156 million grant from the EPA to expand the number of low-income and disadvantaged communities with access to distributed solar. On August 7th, we received notification that the EPA is attempting to terminate all Solar for All grants, so to all states, including Washington's award. So as we work to understand this outcome and pursue avenues to reinstate the program, we have paused our Solar for All program until further notice. So unfortunately, we're not able to answer any questions on Solar for All today, but we will keep the community partners and stakeholders informed as new information becomes available. And with that, I'll pass it back to Aidan to discuss some of our state funding opportunities.
Thanks, Jill. Yeah, in lieu of Solar for All for the time being, Commerce does have state-funded solar opportunities available. So we have approximately $54 million available for clean energy grants. The amounts available for award may vary as we stand up the programs, but these are from 3 different funding sources, and they will be delivered through a consolidated process, much like last year. If you're familiar with our work from last year, we combined funding sources in a consolidated request for applications, and we'll do something similar this year. The numbers here are approximate, but yeah, just wanted to give you all a ballpark. These numbers may change as we develop the programs. We are ramping up quickly to make the funding available, and we're going to be sharing more detailed information, including on things like eligibility soon. But yeah, I'm going to share some parameters around each of the funding sources here based on the legislation. And please keep in mind the grant solicitation may have additional priorities or focuses. I'll also tease here towards the bottom of the slide, I'll be mentioning the Washington State University program, the Community Solar Expansion Program. This is an existing program not administered through the Department of Commerce, but is another state-funded opportunity that remains available. So from the commerce side, our first funding source here is one of our legacy programs, the Clean Energy Fund. So if you're familiar with our work and have engaged with our work in the past, you'll be familiar with the Clean Energy Fund. Here, there's about $25 million available for clean energy projects. There are various types of clean energy projects that this grant can fund, and they must provide public benefits like energy savings, emissions reductions, or increased energy independence. This fund source will also prioritize vulnerable populations, overburdened communities, and tribes. The next fund source here is solar and battery energy storage grants. There's about $19 million available here for distributed solar and battery energy storage projects, either separate or combined. These projects must increase grid resilience or reduce energy costs. And here the priority will be for grid-connected facilities that serve critical infrastructure or that serve communities during outages. The third commerce energy source here is the Clean Energy Community Grants. Here, approximately $10 million is available for the planning and implementation of clean energy projects. These projects must serve vulnerable populations, be located in overburdened communities, or serve tribes. And there are various eligible uses here, including energy efficiency, renewable energy, sustainable infrastructure, affordable housing, transportation, education, and workforce development. That is a big list and covers a lot of bases, but we will provide more information on the specifics and other details about the program in the near future as we roll out funding. So we're planning to make these funding sources available in a consolidated process, like I mentioned, similar to the application process we piloted in 2024. So you will be able to submit a single application to qualify for any of these commerce funding sources, and tribes will have a tailored application process and exclusive access to set-aside funding. One thing to note here is that applicants should expect a focus on shovel-ready projects this time around, this biennium. We will be looking for projects that have clear, well-supported timelines and permits in place where possible. We will be hosting a few listening sessions in the coming weeks if you'd like to learn more and provide feedback. We will be developing the opportunity, as I said, in the coming weeks, and we'll be able to share more information there and have an opportunity for conversation. As I wrap up here, I'll share the links to those listening sessions in the chat. So this is our draft timeline for the commerce funding. Here we are in August, and we're developing the grant opportunities right now. We expect to open the requests for applications in mid-September. Plan to have applications open for about 6 weeks until early November, and then at which point we'll evaluate the applications and announce awards in mid-December or so. We do expect projects to have a performance period of about a year and a half from February 2026 to June 2027. Great. That brings us to the Washington State University Community Solar Expansion Program. This is another state funding source for solar and battery energy storage projects. This program started in 2022 with $100 million available, $17 million of which has been utilized. That 17 million represents 24 completed projects all over the state and about 65 more in development right now. Here, the solar arrays must be between 12 and 199 kilowatts, and battery energy storage must be for critical resilience needs. These are low-income serving solar projects as well. That's the main intent of the program. Organizations can apply to receive a lump sum incentive payment for the full cost of these low-income community solar projects. And the administrators of these projects can be nonprofits, tribal or local housing authorities, or a utility. These projects must distribute electric bill savings directly to low-income households as a non-bill credit, or they must distribute other benefits through a non-utility bill arrangement. Essentially, they need to find a way, given the policies of a utility service territory or metering infrastructure, to pass through the value of solar to low-income households. So for example, if project savings can't be distributed directly through an on-bill credit, based on that arrangement with the utility service territory or the metering infrastructure, then savings from the solar project can be passed on to the low-income households through other services like reduced cost internet, financial literacy classes, or shuttle services, for example, at a multifamily affordable housing property. I do have the website and email there up on the screen. Again, I will put that in the chat so folks have that at their fingertips. But yeah, we do work with and interface with Washington State University and their energy program, but we don't administer this program. So, you know, questions and applications would go to them. For Commerce's programs, you can reach out to us with any questions. We have an email set up, Epic Grants. That's the name of our unit. That's a shorthand for the energy programs in communities. So you can reach out there. And then those are the dates and times for those listening sessions on the consolidated request for applications opportunities. I'll put all that info in the chat for everyone. Thanks so much for your time.
Aiden, real quickly, there's a question in the chat. Are there any size requirements for the battery storage on the projects within the WSU Community Solar Program?
Size requirements, I'm not aware of any. They do stipulate that those batteries must be for critical resilience needs. But I'm not aware of any there. They might have more details on that if you want to reach out to them directly.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that was great information on the state resources available. And with that, I'm now going to turn it to Alex at Seattle City Light, who will be talking to us about programs available through them. And Alex, take it away.
Great, thanks so much. Give me a second here to get into presentation mode.
All good.
Computer is very, very slow today. Just a moment. Okay, everyone can see my slides. All right, I'll get started.
Yeah, you're good. Thanks.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Portashava. Really happy to be here with you today. I am from Seattle City Light. I am part of our Customer Energy Solutions Division, and I oversee our Customer Renewables and Storage segment, which is a group of programs that I'll discuss today. And is the next slide. There we go. So our time together, I have about 15 minutes. I'll make sure I stay on time. I'll describe who is Seattle City Light. I'll share about our renewables programs, which are listed here, and I'll go into more detail in a little bit, and then love to answer any questions or discuss ideas that you might have. So who is Seattle City Light? We are a municipal utility. We serve the city of Seattle, and we also serve what we call our franchise cities. So Shoreline, Lake Forest Park, Normandy Park, SeaTac, Renton, Tukwila, and parts of unincorporated King County. We serve a little shy of 1 million residents, and we have a little shy of 500,000 metered customers. Customer Energy Solutions. So this is the division that I'm a part of. We design and implement customer-facing programs, including renewable energy programs. And City Light makes a point to talk with all sorts of different folks when we design and implement those programs. So subject matter experts, customers, community members, we really want to understand what's important and how we can best serve people with our programs. Okay, so here's sort of an overview of our renewable generation programs. We are interested in working with customers to build renewable energy systems on their property, which help drive down their electricity costs. The amount of generation that your system produces, that energy is immediately used to power the building, or in time of excess is sent back to the grid. And we have several programs that we offer to compensate you for that energy that you send back to the grid, either with credits that are used to offset the cost of your consumption, or we have some other crediting programs for excess that you send back to the grid. Okay, so I'll start with community solar. So what is community solar? For those of you unfamiliar, it's any solar project within a geographic area in which the benefits, environmental and also financial, flow to multiple customers. So you'll see here, this array is all the way over here, and yet this building far down the road is taking advantage of the solar power that's produced by that facility. So why community solar for City Light? For City Light, here are some of our policy drivers and some of the external funding drivers that we're looking at. So we have a strategic plan. We're in the process of developing a new 10-year strategic plan, but we're looking to improve customer experience and create additional opportunities for customers to engage with carbon-free generation resources and distributed energy resources, or DERs. Our integrated resources plan, this really tells us what demand our customers have and how we go about meeting that from a generation perspective. We have to add a ton more customer solar by 2043. And so we're looking at leveraging the programs we have and also thinking about what other programs we may offer. Within CES, we have our own sort of outcomes that we're driving towards. We're looking to address climate change. We want to build community resilience, and we also want to make sure that the programs we offer, all sorts of customers have access to those programs and services. The solar investment tax credit, yes, it was a driver, and it's expiring. And because community solar, we're still in the design phase, it's highly unlikely that we'll be able to leverage those tax credits. You heard from Aiden about House Bill 1814, which established the Washington State University Community Solar Expansion Program. This is the incentive that's available for community solar projects that benefit low-income households for at least 10 years. So City Light intends to leverage that funding to build its own community solar projects. Okay, so quick history. We did have a community solar program that launched in 2011. It actually sunset or exited our portfolio of programs in 2020. We had 5 projects at 4 sites, and now all of those sites, all those projects are owned by those site hosts. Fast forward, now Community Solar 2.0, we're currently in the design phase of that program. So we're looking at shifting things a bit. So the first program did not have any income eligible set aside. This new program, we're hoping to offer at least 50% of new solar power for income eligible customers in that 0 to 80% AMI bucket, and offer them no cost participation with a guaranteed bill credit. We really want to focus on locally sited projects. So projects that are within our service territory, interconnected on our distribution grid. And we feel strongly about integrating workforce development, thinking about how we can support existing workforce development programs that are serving priority populations to increase access to on-site training and also in-office training related to the development of solar and storage projects. Okay, so I'm sort of curious. I don't know how this will work, but thinking about what benefits could we see with community solar. So if you're familiar, if you're not, I'd love to hear in the chat, or if you want to unmute, what benefits come to mind when you think about community solar. Anybody care to share verbally or in the chat?
More local energy, just nearby.
Thanks, Leslie. Yes, totally. Okay, well, lucky for you, I'm going to share what benefits we might see. Some of the sort of core benefits that we've been thinking about are increased equitable access to renewable energy and an opportunity to reduce electricity bills. So we know at City Light that of the programs we currently offer, specifically net metering, it's typically our affluent customers that can afford to put solar on their own roofs because the roof's in good condition, because they own their homes. Those are the folks that are able to leverage the environmental and financial benefits. And so we really want to think about what program could we create to increase equitable access for all of our customers. Just like Leslie said, we want to build new local renewable generation. We want to see it. We want it to be tangible, and in some instances, even paired with storage to offer community resilience. So another really important part of the design for us is that customers are informing program design. So we're not just offering them a design program and asking them to sign up. We're really engaging them from the very beginning and empowering them to make suggestions and maybe even decisions about what the program looks like. So we have a partnership with another city department, the Department of Neighborhoods. They have a community liaison program. In this picture here are several of those community liaisons. They're existing community leaders. They have relationships with community, and they're helping us build those trusting relationships with folks. They are offering us ideas about our program. They're helping us connect with organizations and individuals. They'll even help us develop the criteria that we'll use to cite projects. We've also hosted some focus groups with our market rate customers, trying to understand how they might participate, if they're willing to pay extra, if they care about seeing projects in their communities. We've had a ton of conversations with potential site hosts for these projects. We've engaged with solar contractors to understand sort of where they're at and what kind of information they'd like to receive from us and how they want to be engaged in our design process. We've also focused on engaging our urban native populations, and are also looking at consulting with we don't have any federally recognized tribes within our service territory, but looking to consult with a tribe that owns land within our service territory. So we've been working with the community liaisons. Gabriel, he's on the far right, to connect with Chief Seattle Club, for example, and Duwamish Tribal Services to better understand how we can reach our native customers. So here are some of the customer values we've learned about, and some of these are applicable to more than just community solar. So financial benefit, that savings that we might see on our bills, the increased access to local renewable energy, the location of the project, seeing it, honoring community spaces, resiliency against outages if we pair these community solar projects with storage, possible future community ownership of assets. So what happens at the 20-year mark or the 25-year mark, depending on the contractual arrangement with the site hosts. And then, stacking the discounts that the utility offers with a community solar discount. So we have a utility discount program that currently offers a 60% discount on an eligible customer's bill. Could we stack that with community solar to further reduce their energy burden? And like I mentioned, workforce development and then safety. So we're considering different opportunities to support programs that exist right now, that hire folks from priority zip codes, for example, to participate in on-site training opportunities, and then safety for everybody. But as we think about whether the utility can own these projects or not, we want to make sure that we have the appropriate standards in place and the right site plans in place to ensure safety for everyone. And also for our customers, sort of missed that point. What we've heard from our community liaisons is that there's some concern about battery storage technology specifically. How does it work? What happens if a fire starts? And so we're wanting to make sure that those concerns are reflected in the design. So some of the design elements for community solar, we're hoping to build somewhere between 3-4 megawatts. Starting in 2027, we're still finalizing exactly what that goal is. We want to leverage external funding. We want to include workforce development. We want these projects to be in community, and we want to celebrate them by potentially partnering with our committee that identifies opportunities for city art projects. So again, celebrating community spaces and working with those site hosts to beautify those spaces potentially. And then it's important to offer no cost participation and a bill credit for income eligible customers. Wanted to bring this up because I think it's relevant to affordable housing. So we've had some conversations with HUD, or the Housing and Urban Development, and we want to make sure that we're offering a financial incentive for income eligible customers that doesn't impact their income or their utility allowance. So the plan right now is to offer a percentage discount based on historic energy use and not tie it to consumption and not have it impact the electricity rate. We need to work through the specifics, but once we have a specific outline, we plan to go back to the regional HUD office and have them hopefully issue some kind of letter that indicates we've sort of are thinking about it correctly, and that yes, it won't be considered income or affect the utility allowance. We're talking about auto enrollment versus open enrollment. So how can we most easily get customers engaged? Perhaps we can auto enroll customers already enrolled in our utility discount program. And yet we also want to offer an opportunity for other folks to participate. We also want to offer priority enrollment for people living near these projects, perhaps within a 5-mile radius, still working through that. And then we want to compensate the site hosts for hosting these projects, whether on a piece of land or on a roof. So we're working through all those logistics this year as well. Okay, so here's a general timeline. You know, as I mentioned, customer and community outreach is ongoing. We started our program design in spring of last year. We are continuing that through next year. We're focused on project siting and developing criteria, leveraging that list of potential site hosts. We hope to start construction in 2027, and then customer enrollment will happen whenever those projects are finished. I think 2028 is probably a little bit optimistic, but there'll probably be a range of when each project is complete. All right, so shifting to net energy metering, or NEM, and large renewables. So net energy metering offers a bill credit for the power customers generate. So this applies to generators up to 100 kilowatts, or kW, and affordable housing can net meter up to 500 kW. Customers receive a kilowatt hour credit for each kilowatt hour sent back to the grid. Credits are automatically applied to their future bills, and they offset the customer's electricity use. Unused credits are cleared annually at the end of March. Virtual net energy metering, or VNEM. So this is not yet an offering for City Light folks, but we are planning a pilot for a few affordable multifamily properties to test the functionality of VNEM. So VNEM offers, the building owns a rooftop solar array that generates kWh, or kilowatt hours, and gets credit for those that it sends back to the grid. So typically that would be tied to a single building, and instead this functionality allows those credits to be given to multiple different customers or tenants in this case, and they can see those credits directly on their bills. So property managers have increased flexibility on how they allocate the credits. They can do it to tenant units or common spaces. Okay, large renewables. So this applies to generators from 100 kW up to 5 megawatts. Customers receive a monetary credit for each kilowatt hour sent back to the grid, and the credit amounts vary by month and range from 3 cents to 9 cents per kWh. Credits are higher in the sunnier and also warmer summer months. Okay, our voluntary renewables program, or Green Up. So Green Up is a voluntary renewable energy program. Customers have an opportunity to support local wind, solar, and other renewable energy projects. We purchase regional renewable energy credits, or RECs, on behalf of customers that enroll, and we also fund local rooftop solar projects. Projects are hosted by nonprofits and also public organizations, and I'll talk a little bit about our partnership with HDC in this realm. Okay, so wanted to mention specifically that City Light has partnered with the Housing Development Consortium, HDC, through the Exemplary Buildings Program. So this program includes 4 projects, and these projects demonstrate how to design for housing equity, tenant health, and building decarbonization. City Light pays incentives for energy savings achieved above code or above the building code, and we may also buy the renewable energy credits or RECs as part of the Green Up Community Program. I also wanted to mention that so for all 4 of these exemplary building projects, they are all participating in Green Up in one way or another. So we have Othello, we have Northlot, we have Hobson and Sawara. So we buy the RECs from those sites through Green Up, plus the energy efficiency incentives for savings achieved above code. So those projects are in various states. Some we have completed the REC purchase, and some those projects are still in progress. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Happy to answer questions. I haven't looked at the chat yet. Curious to hear what excites you and also how you might want to be engaged moving forward. Thank you.
Alex, Sharon from RED Homesite has a couple of questions. I'm going to let her just come off mute if you're okay to do that, Sharon, and I think we have time to go ahead and try to address those.
Yeah. I just wanted to know when the pilot program that you mentioned, the virtual net energy metering, will start.
We're still working through the timeline. It won't be this year, maybe early next, but I'm happy to offer you updates as we get more clarity on that timing.
Okay.
And then did you want to ask about the EV charging for, is that a Seattle City Light or a state program? I see the response from Jill.
It's Seattle City Light, but perhaps it's better offline. But we have a project. It's a co-op housing project in City of Seattle. We put in parking when it wasn't required. It's not required. And we were looking at getting assistance for putting EV charging stations in for the co-op housing. And we were told that we had to meet like a 15% minimum of spots. I think we can put 4 in, and we were looking for funding to do more. But I think we don't meet the minimum requirement, which is like 4.65 EV spots that we have to provide first before we can get funding on it. So we're just shy of that. And so we just wanted to know if there was, if we could talk to someone a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'd love to connect you with Victor Couto. He's our program manager, and for a couple of our transportation electrification programs, and he will have all the details and can help you think through your site.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Anybody else? We've got a minute or two here. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. That was super helpful. And continuing in the same vein of talking about utility opportunities, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie Myers, who is going to talk about the offerings from PSE for the service areas that are outside of Seattle City Light. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Everybody can see my screen. I can't see you anymore, but I assume you can speak up if you can. So I oversee, my name is Leslie Myers. I oversee several of our voluntary renewable energy programs. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm not seeing your screen.
Okay. Let's see.
Are others, if anybody else can't see it?
I don't think I shared it. I think I just went into presentation mode without sharing it. Sorry about that.
All good. Thank you.
How's this? And then now
it's
is it
coming.
expanded?
Yeah, it's okay. There it is. Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
There it is. Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I oversee several of our voluntary renewable energy programs, including commercial size solar. Puget Sound Energy is like what Alex talked about. We have big clean energy goals. We've got expansion that we need to meet for people moving into the area. We want to bring more distributed energy resources online, and for the most part, we also have done a lot of community engagement for program design. So interested in everyone's feedback and questions here, and I'll just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to talk a little bit about several of our voluntary our solar energy programs. PSE also has a net metering program like Alex described. So most people probably know that's when net metering is when the solar is used on your property first, and then any energy that's not used as it's generated is exported to the grid and turned into net metering credits. Those credits expire at the end of March, just like Alex's, because I think that's a state law. And net metering is also limited to system sizes of 100 kilowatts or smaller. However, for purposes for this group, we really have two new solar options that I wanted to talk about. Both of these new solar options have the ability to use solar first at your property. So you're installing solar behind the meter at the property, and the energy is used first. Any energy that's exported to the grid, instead of turning into net metering credits, turns into financial credits. And these financial credits are automatically dispersed onto PSC bills. And those financial credits can also be used to reduce any type of charges that's on your PSC bill. If you end up accumulating more credits than you are able to use over time, you can also request a check, and we will send a check. The credits do not expire, so this is a different thing than net metering also. And these system sizes can be a lot larger. They can be up to 1,000 kilowatts. So the first one is called solar energy credit, and this is really ideal for solar generation that matches real-time power needs of the building. So when I think about affordable housing, I think this is really good for administrative buildings or housing structures with larger roofs and common spaces. So if you've got a housing structure and you want to be able to maximize the roof space and go over net metering, or you don't think that you would be able to use those net metering credits before they expire, the solar energy credit is a great way to go. And again, so this is where the exported energy gets financial credits, and they will continue to show up on the bill and cut overhead costs for that property as they are generated and billed. Our next one is called multi-occupant solar. We had to call it multi-occupant solar, but for this purpose, it's really multi-family solar. So this is ideal for buildings with large roof spaces, but low usage in common areas. And so this is also really good for buildings where you've got multiple tenants and where the property owner wants to help reduce those tenant bills. The financial credits can be allocated in any way, including the house meter and to the tenant. So if you've got 4 tenants, 3 tenants, 20 tenants, you could split it up. All the exported financial credit could benefit all of those tenants equally. You could decide, well, this is a 3-bedroom apartment. They should get a larger allocation than the 1-bedroom apartment and things like that. And so you can really kind of custom tailor to fit what are the goals at that property. This is just a side-by-side comparison for design considerations. So again, like solar energy credit is where a single customer has a large roof and a large energy load that's at that property. Multi-occupant solar is where the landlord or property manager wants to pass the value of exported energy back to tenants. And then net metering is where a single customer's annual solar production and the size of the solar array really kind of closely match. And so you're not expecting or looking to create an income stream or financial credits that you might be able to use later on. We do have incentives to enable these types of projects. So for solar energy credit and multi-occupant solar, we have up to 100% or $250,000 per project to reduce the upfront cost of installing the solar. This can be stacked with the Washington State or the WSU Clean Energy Expansion or Community Solar Expansion Fund. It can be stacked with other grants that you might have. And really, we're looking to reduce the bills for community-based organizations, governmental agencies, and tribal entities. For affordable housing providers, you don't have to be a nonprofit affordable housing provider to qualify to get an incentive. You simply have to apply and have a competitive application. We do have a community solar program. We launched it in 2021. We are at 16 megawatts of installed capacity with a goal of getting up to 50 megawatts when all is said and done. So the benefit of renewable, like what Alex described in her slide, is your central solar arrays where the value of the solar is then benefiting people that live elsewhere. I only have a feature here about the income eligible community solar, but we do have two types of shares. There's the premium product for customers that are able to pay for the community solar share and get the financial credit. And then there's the income eligible for customers that meet qualifications, which is 200% FPL or 80% AMI. We don't expect or ask customers to prove their income. We take their word for it. They simply have to attest that, yes, they do qualify. And then they can subscribe to up to 2 shares at no cost. I wanted to include this here as affordable housing providers that you might be interested to know that these are options for your customer or your tenants that are paying their own bills. As supplies last, we are currently fully subscribed, but we expect to be bringing on another couple of megawatts within the next year to 2. We've got plenty in the pipeline right now. And really, this is my last slide. Just wanted to say, when you're thinking about solar, PSC is still here to help. We highly recommend that you do the research and scope your project. If you're going to be building in PSC service area, we suggest you use a recommended energy professional, and then we'll walk you through and your contractor through to safely interconnect to the electrical grid. And that is it. I didn't want to go overboard with slides, so I kept it pretty tight. But if people have questions about the incentives or the program design, I am ready for you.
Thanks, Leslie. That was great. I think we lost several folks at the 1 o'clock point, unfortunately, but certainly I will be happy to include your email and the slides when we do the distribution of information to the registrants. So
thank you.
Hopefully you'll pick up some more interest at that point. Moving right along, we're going to now hear from Mason Rolfe, who is an actual practitioner in the field that works with clients that are doing installation of these community solar projects. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to Mason. Thank you so much.
Cheers, thank you. And thank you to all the presenters that came before me. Here we go. Nice to connect with you all. My name is Mason Rolfe. I'm the Executive Director of Olympia Community Solar. We're a nonprofit located in Olympia that supports project development and general solar education. We have a mission to steward an equitable and accessible transition to clean energy. We started in 2018. And we focus our work on projects that promote access to clean energy, economic justice, and emissions reduction in underserved communities. And here's a photo of at least part of our team at a ribbon cutting this past summer. So our work falls into 3 main categories of education, residential-focused solarized programs, and project development. So here's an example of one of our solarized programs with our program director, Ben, presenting to a group there in the upper right corner. That program normally runs from March through July of each year and helps customers go solar by aggregating demand and securing better prices from installers by doing so. And then we work on commercial project development, mostly for nonprofits, public entities, and tribes. Here's an install on a nonprofit in downtown Olympia, on a church in Olympia, and on a nonprofit in Ording that serves formerly houseless veterans. This is, I think, my favorite project that we've done so far. So my role today is to talk about how to use all these different programs and grants and incentives that were discussed earlier and actually take those resources and access them and move them into a project. So our team supports our clients by performing feasibility studies, providing development support, financial planning, and grant writing and management services. And so today, while we talk about how to develop a solar project, I'm going to use a recent completed example of Canterbury Manor, which is an elders housing facility in Bremerton. And so here's the process. So we're going to start by organizing a project team, having that project team collect essential site information, collecting quotes from installers and creating a funding plan, securing funding, and then moving that project into the contracting and construction phases. I will say, you know, in my experience, the biggest challenge here has been steps 1 through 3 and just getting all the information together and having enough information to make an informed decision about whether or not to move forward with a project. If we can do that, and we get the information together, usually it's a very clear yes, that the project's going to be a benefit for the client, and we want to move it to funding applications. Everything from 1 to 3 on this list from our team is totally free of charge. So we'd love to help you organize your project and secure all the information you need to make a decision about moving towards funding. So kicking off with Canterbury, we started this project by connecting with the CEO of the organization that owns and operates this building, and they brought into the team their facilities manager. And so with those key people, the decision maker and the facilities manager, we started the project. We collected information about the site, and the big ones to consider are how old is the site's roof and what condition is it in. We don't want to install solar on an old roof or a roof needing replacement. It's best to have that work completed before installing panels up there, which will obstruct access to the roof. We'll collect the energy bill, which will tell us how much energy you're consuming and therefore how much energy we need to produce with a solar array. And then if it's available, the building's plan set, which will give us measurements of the roof and schematics of your electrical system. With that information, we'll package it up and seek quotes from local installers. Here, before I do that, I'll just say it's pretty simple to find installers in your area with a Google search, though that won't really reveal their quality. So 2 good places to find contractors are oftentimes utilities will have a preferred contractor network. I know PSE has one. And then there's also the Washington Solar Energy Industry Association, which has a pretty strict rules for their memberships operation. And so I look at their member list at wasia.org for recommendations sometimes. So again, that's a preferred contractor list from utility companies or members of the WASIA organization. So it could take a few weeks to get quotes, but the installers should provide information about what equipment they're using. In this case, it's made in Washington Solfab solar panels, how large their system is and how much energy it's going to produce. That information, particularly the production, will allow us to estimate how much you're going to save from the installation. And most importantly, what is the upfront cost of installing solar on the building? And that cost, which varies dramatically for each solar project, and you know the market conditions at the time, is our starting basis to creating a financial plan to fund the system. So we need to know all the costs and the benefits to make a good decision. So once we have the cost, we can create a financial plan. We'll try to collect everything that could incur cost, and I'm thinking the turnkey proposal for installation, any third-party services needed like electrical upgrades, roof work, technical support, things like that. And then creating a plan of what source of funds is going to pay for that work and making sure that the funding and the expenses line up in a cash flow. So we have money when we need money. So for the example of Canterbury, their project funding came from 3 different sources. shout out to PSE for their solar grant program, which provided about a third of the funding. Another third of the funding came from the WSU program that was spoken of earlier. And then the final mix came from tax credits. So actually, this project was funded by all of the things that we've been talking about today. I will say, moving into the future, one of my goals here, and to keep the project simple, is to try to go after a single funding source for the project. Multiple grants, there can be timeline issues or funding rules issues that could conflict with each other. So it's possible to do it this way. It's easiest to try to get all your funding from one source. Outside of grants, there's a few other ways to fund projects. You can pay for it with your own dollars, secure loans or financing to pay for the upfront costs, or secure these grants and incentives. The cash option is definitely the fastest and easiest way. If you're looking for an immediate project installation, cash is the way to go. If you have access to a line of financing through your regular business, that could be a good option. Or I'd recommend the Washington Housing Finance Commission's Sustainable Energy Trust program. For financing, they have great loans for energy projects. And then finally, grants will be the slowest but often best financial option for organizations. I will say grants require a lot of patience. It can often be 1 to 2 years before we secure the right grant or have that grant contracted and can move to construction. So it takes patience, but it often pays off. So process. With a grant, we'll identify the grant during the funding period or during the financial planning period. We'll submit an application. I've highlighted award here because that's our decision point with a grant. It's if we get an award, we can choose whether or not to accept the award. And if we accept it, that's really the green light for the project, and that's when risk begins for the client. If it's not the award we were expecting, or if it's not quite enough to justify moving the project forward, we can always refuse an award at that point. But if we accept it, we'll move forward and contract the grant, meaning we sign an agreement between the client and the grant provider to provide that money. After the grant contract's signed, we can move towards the construction phase of the project. So this will begin with signing an installation contract with your installer. And then that installer will seek the approvals, move forward to construction, and then once construction is complete, have that system inspected and approved for operation. And the circle here is to indicate that these tasks are the installer's responsibility. So at this point, we'll follow along and make sure everything's done correctly, but they are responsible for securing approvals and making sure that the system passes inspection. So I'm going to pause there and see if y'all have any questions, but in summary, our team is happy to support you with the beginning phases of your project and help you identify what funding resources you qualify for. And then if you need more support, grant writing or grant management, we're happy to quote those services out. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Mason. And it's great to see it all tied together in this way. I think that we've lost pretty much everybody except for a handful of the speakers at this point. So we'll go ahead and close the meeting, and I will send emails of contact and presentations to the registrants so that for those that did have to leave a little bit early, they'll be able to access the full thing and have the recording available as well. So I really want to thank you all. This was super helpful to have it gathered into a single presentation. I think there's still a lot of great funding opportunities available that people tend to not, fully recognize the variety of sources. So it's really valuable to tie it all into one piece. So without continuing to jammer on here, I'll just thank you all once again, and we'll stop our recording and let you all have a little bit of time back this afternoon. So thank you all for joining us, and see you soon.